TSN 690, the host of the Montreal Forum from 10 to noon, the co-host of the Tradition from noon to 1. He is, I would say honestly, one of the top talk show hosts in Montreal, and thank goodness TSN 690 has been saved. He also does the Delmar Habs post-game show. Hockey and soccer are his passions. He's got a son who will probably be a professional soccer player within the next 10 years. Let's hear it for Tony Marinaro. Tony, come on.
It was at 3 o'clock this afternoon, they're going to announce the Hockey Hall of Fame inductees. And every year they can induct up to 4 candidates, and 3 are pretty much a lock. One of them played here in Montreal, of course, Chris Chelios, good old Jewish boy. It's a joke, obviously. Scott Niedermeyer and Brendan Shanahan. So the fourth is up for discussion, and there are a lot of names: Jeremy Roenick, Keith Tkachuk, Rob Blake, Alexander McGillney, Curtis Joseph, Phil Housley. This goes on to John LeClaire and Eric Lindros. And I mentioned today on the program that, albeit not a popular choice, I think Eric Lindros should be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Now that's a topic of conversation. We can go back and forth till we're blue in the face, but just on that topic, one of the things that we have to understand is that in his first 8 years in the National Hockey League, starting off at age 18, where Eric Lindros represented Canada at the Canada Cup before he even played a National Hockey League game, and he went on to be a pretty good performer in that Canada Cup. Eric Lindros went on over the next 8 seasons to average anywhere between a point to a point and a half per game on average in every year in his first 8 years. Following 2 years of time off because of concussions, he joined the New York Rangers shortly after that, and in his first year with the New York Rangers, once again averaged more than a point per game. So, in my opinion, without he probably wouldn't win a popularity contest, but Eric Lindros was, once upon a time, love him or hate him, one of the most dominant hockey players in hockey. When you say Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux, obviously they're special players, and Eric Lindros is not in that category, but at the same time, when you talk about dominant hockey players, Eric Lindros' name will be a part of anyone's conversation when you're saying top 3 dominant hockey players at one time. So at one point, it was Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr and Eric Lindros, or Peter Forsberg and Joe Sakic and Eric Lindros. If I take a look at all the names that are on the ballot this season, I think Eric Lindros was, at one point, the most dominant out of all the other hockey players. And then we can make an argument out of guys that have gone in the past. Cam Neely didn't play a lot of National Hockey League games either. His career was short, and he too never won the Stanley Cup, like Eric Lindros didn't win the Stanley Cup. But Eric Lindros was, once upon a time, the Hart Trophy winner as the most valuable player in the league. And with all due respect to Cam Neely, Eric Lindros, at his best, was a better hockey player than Cam Neely. So, on to everyone's favorite topic of conversation, the Montreal Canadiens. And the reason being that they haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1993, because there's not enough French players on the team. That'll come up this year, you'll see. But, Marc Bergevin was under a lot of scrutiny and was actually heavily criticized about a week ago when he wasn't able to secure Vincent Lecavalier. And there was a lot of pressure from a certain sector of the fan base and some external factors. But I actually tip my hat to the Canadiens general manager because he was under a lot of pressure. Serge Savard was one of several people who actually went on the air and said that Marc Bergevin should have signed Vincent Lecavalier at all costs, no matter if it took $4 million, $5 million, $6 million, or $7 million, and he wanted a 4-year deal, a 5-year deal, or a 6-year deal. But I think, with all due respect to Serge Savard, being a general manager in the National Hockey League 15 years ago and being a general manager in the National Hockey League now, a lot of things have changed. The collective bargaining agreement is a big part of that. The salary cap is a huge part of that. And you really have to know how to spend your money wisely. And so Marc Bergevin didn't offer Vincent Lecavalier a $4.5 million deal times 5 years. But knowing all the pressure that came with it and the external factors and all that stuff, I think that's a sign of a good general manager that he didn't do that. Having said that, a couple of days later, when LeCavalier ended up signing with Philadelphia, he signed Danny Briere. And I think a lot of people are looking at the Montreal Canadiens and saying, how can a team with Jonathan Gallagher on the right side and Darnay and Plekanec already down the middle sign another small guy, which is Danny Briere, 5'10", about 180 pounds. Probably not even 5'10" on skates. But here's the deal. I mean, if you know that the Montreal Canadiens are small, and I know that the Montreal Canadiens are small, and chances are the Montreal Canadiens general manager knows that they're small. I probably wouldn't have said that about the other general managers they've had over the past couple of years, but this one seems to know what he's doing. But all in all, is to say that I think Danny Briere is a good player. I think $4 million for a 2-year deal is not the end of the world. At least you're not stuck with a contract for 5 or 6 or 7 years. Having said all of that, I'm convinced that this deal was made with the purpose, knowing already that the Montreal Canadiens are going to make other roster moves going forward, and some of those smaller players that we talked about, I think, are going to end up somewhere else. A high-ranking member of the Montreal Canadiens assured me that the Montreal Canadiens will be bigger, they'll be stronger, they'll be better at the start of the upcoming season than they were at the end of the regular season. And as we speak right now, with Briere and Parros, they're not really bigger and they're not really smaller, because you have one that's small and you have one that's big. But that's what I was told, and I take them to their word. A couple of weeks, last week was the NHL draft in Jersey. And the Montreal Canadiens' philosophy, like a lot of other teams, has been, well, we'll draft the best player available at the draft. Things changed this year, because Trevor Timmins was told, we need to make this team bigger. And as we look for unrestricted free agents where there's a lot of overpaying and we don't want to do that, and every time we call a team and try and acquire a big guy, we cannot land them, because if there's a big hockey player, everyone wants to hold on to him, doesn't want to part ways. I can tell you this, the Montreal Canadiens really tried to get a 10 or 11 pick, notably from Philadelphia, to draft a 6'7", 230-pound defenseman who plays in Rimouski, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. But the asking price was their pick number 25, 34, and 36, and the Canadiens said no. And that pick 25, 34, and 36, which ended up being Mike McCarron, right winger, Jacob Delarose, left winger, and Zach Fucali, a goalie, are all going to play in the National Hockey League one day. So it would have been one of those 3-for-1 deals that I'm not so sure would have made sense. So I think in the end everything played itself out. I think the Canadiens will be okay. And you know, they had a real good run last year in a shortened season. Unfortunately, they broke down in the playoffs. So if they can get a little bigger and a little stronger, and maybe add a good old Jewish boy along the way, I think they'll be okay. And last time they had one, they won the Stanley Cup. Is that right? It's funny because
You got Hopper. They played the Stanley Cup with him.
yeah, no, but that doesn't matter. Let's not support Mike's argument, right? So let's forget about that. It's
Jeff
funny.
doesn't count, Jeff Halpern.
Jeff Halpern doesn't get okay.
It's funny because every time Mike and I get together and we share hockey stories, right? Mike is always the first one to remind me that the last time the Montreal Canadiens had the Stanley Cup, they had Matthew Schneider, a good old Jewish boy. And I'm the first one to remind them the last time they won the Stanley Cup in 1993, they had Paul DiPietro, a good old Italian boy, who eliminated the Quebec Nordiques by scoring 3 goals in Game 6 of Round 1, and scored 2 goals in Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final against the Los Angeles Kings, and was the game's first star. Remember that.
He was in the stadium for about 40 years, and he came home with stories that, I don't know, 50% of them were true, but I'm telling you, the ones that were true, if he were to ever broadcast them, I mean, I could sit down and share with you guys one-on-one some of the stories he knew from behind the scenes would blow your minds. But anyway, we won't go there.
Well, look, in ending, I want to say this. I know that, you know, when Mike introduced me, he talked about some of my passions, and sports, along with my family, of course, is a huge passion of mine, and I love both. Don't ask me which one I like more, I love more. But, you know, it's more so, it's hockey because of where we live, but I mean, my number one passion has always been soccer. I mean, I was born in it. I'm in it with my kids, and we're in it like 6 days a week. And we've been to Portugal twice over the past couple of years for soccer school. We've been to Spain for a soccer tournament. We've been to Italy a couple of times for soccer school. So it's my number one passion, but I would imagine, stemming from the conversations I've had with Mike, most of you in here, your passion is baseball. And it's not number one on my list. Soccer is number one on my list, but I would definitely welcome the opportunity to get the Expos back in Montreal. I know it would mean a lot to all of you, and it would mean a lot to the city. And I, for one, never had a chance to bring any of my boys, ages 10 and 8, to a baseball game. So I cherish the opportunity that we'll have a chance to do that again. And if Mayor Housefather will go into his pocket, maybe we can come up with about $10 or $15 million.
You're seeing the Côte Saint-Luc Expos.
That would be nice. It's got a nice ring to it, don't you think?
I'd rather have a winter soccer game.
Well,
Anyway, you know what? Every time Mike gets me out to these events and I have a chance to meet new people, I always, without hesitation, say yes, because at the end of the day, make no mistake, I mean, I'm doing what I always wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I wasn't good enough, but I'm not going to be one of those guys that'll tell you I was good enough, but my mom this, or my dad that, or this injury or that injury. I wasn't good enough, but you know, number 2 on the wish list was to be on the air talking about sports and something that I love. And at the end of the day, if I didn't get support from all of you and all of you listening, we were involved, and Mike can tell you this, in the past year in a Bell Media merger with Astro, of course. And on more than one occasion, it looked like we were possibly going to lose our jobs over at the radio station because of certain CRTC regulations. Anyway, all's well that ends well. We found out about a week or 10 days ago that we're going to be okay, and we're going to be on the air providing you with sports talk for at least the next 7 years. So I'm pretty excited about that. And at the end of the day, you know what, the listeners save TSN 690, so I will forever be indebted. Thank you.
We'd like to present this token of appreciation to Tony Marinaro for coming today as our guest speaker, and it reads from the City of Côte Saint-Luc. Presented to Tony Marinaro, Côte Saint-Luc Golf Classic, July 9th, 2013.
I want to bring up now the sponsor of the golf trip, one half of the sponsors. You probably read about him in the page 1 business story in the Gazette today. Côte Saint-Luc president grew up just around the block and has gone on to great success. Not only the CEO of J Corp, but the co-CEO of Yeh Yogurt, Jon Gurman. Come on up, Jon. Jon is back in the loop. Jon is dressed for golf. Jon, how does it feel to be back in the loop?
Feels great to be back in the loop. I'm happy to be back in the loop after 25 years. I moved to the loop. No, I didn't move to. My parents moved to the loop. I was 3 years old. My brother and I were 3. I do have a sister, in case anyone didn't know. I do have a sister. She's a few years older. And we lived in Côte Saint-Luc. I went to Westminster School, elementary school. I went to Wager High School. I hung out at this pool here. We just lived on Melling in an upper duplex right here. Play hockey, Park Haven Park. Then we used to go and play hockey against the guys in Wentworth Park and kick their ass. It was west of Westminster versus east of Westminster. And so Côte Saint-Luc was a big, big part of the Gurman's life. I spent, you know, most of, up until I was 20 years old in the loop. And now we're back since we opened up the Yeh Yogurt in the Quartier Cavendish.
Yeah.
And the Quartier Cavendish was his, you know, we didn't really, we hemmed and hawed on that decision to come to the Cavendish Mall. And my mother told me, she's a mall walker, by the way. And my mom said to me, she says, "You sure you know what you're doing? There's no people there." I walked there every morning. "What are you doing?" I said, "Don't worry, we'll bring them all back." And it was sort of an emotional decision on Marv and my part, because we're from the Luc, and that's really what made us make the decision, was because we were from the Luc, is to come back to the Luc and help the Luc, and help the new mall there. And you know what? It's working. It's doing fabulous, and we think that it's going to attract other vendors to the mall. And we're even thinking of bringing other concepts to Côte Saint-Luc and to Quartier Cavendish from that. I thought I knew a lot of people in Côte Saint-Luc.
Zelda knows them all.
My mother Zelda knows a lot of people, but Mike Cohen, we can't have a meeting at Quartier Cavendish. Like every 3 seconds, someone's coming over. And they're not coming over to see me or Mark. They're coming over talk to Mike Cohen. Mike Cohen used to write about us in the Côte Saint-Luc slow pitch. You know? Even if he didn't like someone, he wrote nice things about them. So that's Mike Cohen.
And I still do that.
And he still does that. I guess that's part of the job. You know? I have to suck up to a lot of people too.
John, your former teacher, Alan Levine, has a question.
Oh.
You know, over at Moncton, I see all the people that bring their dogs, because Yeh Yogurt at least let some dogs sit down, have some yogurt. When are you gonna have some coupons for dogs for yogurt? Bring your dog, Yeh Yogurt.
You know what? I try to accommodate everybody. You know, it's amazing how many people have so many ideas. And we've already thought of all of them. But everyone has great ideas. We are going to come out with, I want to come out with dog bowls shaped into the Yeh Yogurt cup. So the dogs can at least eat out of the same type of cup. And there are more and more dogs that are eating the yogurt. Actually, I still don't know if it's good for the dogs. But they're coming and they're eating the yogurt. So hopefully we'll have coupons. But enjoy the coupons that we have for humans right now. We have human coupons, even for ex-teachers that I'm not sure whether I liked or didn't like.
All right, Alvin and Deb, we have a presentation for John. Come on up. And Mayor Housefather, I think, given the fact that what they're doing to bring, rejuvenate the Cartier Cavendish in our main, I don't know if we're not at the opening. If you have a comment, Mayor Housefather, on what you think of Yeh, what it's brought to Côte Saint-Luc.
I can only say, yay. No, it's amazing. I think one of the things that we've always wanted to do is, don't touch it, please. One of the things we've always wanted to do is rejuvenate the Cavendish Mall, rejuvenate the city center. We are growing as a city. We're getting more and more younger people moving to Côte Saint-Luc. There's more and more of a market for the mall, and more and more of a market for that street. And Yeh Yogurt coming there, they are the pioneers of our Moncton. The avenue, I predict, in 5 to 10 years, you will see a street that is very Moncton-like, to the extent that, it's a smaller street, but, I'm hoping that the Gurmans will own at least half of the businesses on that street.
I'd love to. I would love to.
So thank you so much, John, for doing that.
Let's hear have the plaque here. Alvin and Deb wanting to read the inscription. Deb, go ahead.
So presented to Yeh Yogurt and Cafe and Cartier Cavendish for your significant and outstanding contribution as title sponsor of the 34th annual Côte Saint-Luc Golf Classic.
All right.
I lost my teeth in the Côte Saint-Luc. These teeth I lost here in the Simon Lost Pitch Arena. If you can find them, I'd like them back.